Following the question on the previous video, I thought I'd heat treat a scrap of walnut just to see if I can show you what it does and to see how deep it goes, because maybe I knew, maybe I read it somewhere, but I can't actually remember. My guess would be maybe 3mm, something like that. I heat treated it same as normal. I started off about 8 minutes there, then 4 minutes, then 4 minutes. So sort of this section's been heat treated. So that's the unheat treated wood. Hear the sound of it. And as we move this way, you can hear it's crunchier. And if we go through an angle, that's giving an idea of how deep that's going. So I don't know if we can get the light right. You can see I've gone at an angle, and you can see, let's put something across there. Put something flat across there. You can sort of see it's gone about half of the depth that I've chamfered that to. So it probably is about 3mm, something like that. But it's hard to get the light. And tricky to know how well that will show up on video and how well the chamfering will show up. And if I do a pencil line, that's the sort of surface of the wood, that's the edge of the chamfer, and I reckon the heat treating's going about halfway. So that gives you some sort of idea. But you could certainly hear the difference, or I hope you could. I've started working on from the heat treating, and to avoid taking all the heat treating off in one hit or something, what I'm tending to do is just chamfer the edges slightly. So I've taken one good swoosh of the spoke shave off the belly, and maybe a couple at a slight angle across each edge. I don't know if that really shows up. And I've chamfered the corners a little bit more, so it shouldn't have taken a lot off. But the other thing I've got to allow it to adjust, of course, is the width. But to look at the width, it's best to have a look at the string line. So I've got the string just taut, and you can see how the limbs don't run exactly down the middle, or the string doesn't run down the middle of the limbs, whichever way you want to look at it. So this limb, if I wanted to narrow it, I could narrow it more this side. That limb's much more even, but this is the upper one. This is the one that's a little bit narrow anyway, but it's narrower at the tip, so maybe I can take a whisker off here if I need. But always remember, removing width doesn't actually affect the draw weight as much as taking wood off the thickness. The main thing is the string line looks fairly central. It's a little biased this way, but as I'm right-handed, that's putting it biased towards the arrow side, which is fine. I'm not going to start sculpting the grip or anything, but it will get relieved more here to give more room for the arrow pass, and not exactly a sight window, but you know what I mean. You get a slightly more clear view of the arrow, and if the arrow does move up and down as it's loosed, it's not going to suddenly come out and kick wide. So yeah, plenty of room for shaping the grip. A little bit of room for taking some off the width here and there. A little bit off the width this side, a little bit off the width this side. But string line's not bad. I'll get it back on the tiller. Right, I've just put one extra turn of the string through this toggle, and it's quite tight now, and it's showing the string line slightly better. And you can see it's not as biased towards the arrow side as I thought it was. I had to push the string across this way a little bit. It's just letting me see letting me see how the string wants to sit. So that's not bad. I've flattened this slightly to try and help it sit on the tiller a bit better. But the important thing is, the implication is that I can move the string line across to nearer this side of the tip. So if I want to remove wood to narrow the tip, I should be removing it from here. But I'm not going to do it quite yet. I'll let the bow settle a bit more, and we'll get it a bit back a bit further on the tiller. But it's fairly central in the limb, and the grip can be shaped to suit where the string line is. That's what I always tell people. It's a mistake. Don't shape your grip too much too early, because everything's got to be adjusted to the string line. Similarly at this end, I've got the string biased slightly this way, so I can probably narrow it from this edge. Yes. Right, that knot there, it's pretty close to the edge, and it's actually showing on the edge there, so I've got to be careful not to take any more off that point. There are a few knots on this. There's another one, and there's this funny scoop. I don't know if you can, it's difficult to, there, as I rotate it you'll see, as the shadow moves you'll see how deep it is. That's quite a pretty little feature. So it's coming on. Slow and steady wins the day and all that. Of course, having said I wouldn't narrow that tip, I did narrow it a bit. I thought it may affect the tiller at the end. And of course I'm going at it with a spoke shave. I turn it around and God blimey, I've made that a bit narrow. But then I thought, well, how narrow actually is it? I put the vernier, well, I opened my verniers to 1/2 inch, which is the width of the tip of a war bow where the horn knot goes on, and it was way more than that. It's about 3/4 of an inch. It's just on a wide limbed bow, it can proportionately, it looks like you've gone a bit narrow. So sometimes it's easy to get over focused on something and think, ah no, the sky's falling in, but occasionally you do need to check with an actual measuring device and think, no, I'm all right. Lot of tension on that string. It sits about there. It's barely braced, but you know it's much tighter than the slack string. Hopefully it won't try and flip on me now. The string line's better, and the underside of the grip's been shaped slightly just to help it sit on the tiller. Yeah, she's not trying to flip now, which is a relief. I can actually proceed with some sensible tiller. Yeah, so we're sort of back to where we should have been ages ago. It's looking quite nice. Really get it moving now and see, yeah, it's beginning to, that right limb's looking quite nice. Don't know if it's a slight optical illusion, trick of the light, because it's dark there where some of the heat treating's bled over. And it's chamfered more, it looks stiff and thick there, but that could be an optical illusion. You do have to watch out for that. It's like that black patch on that left limb that really pulls the eye. I don't know if I mentioned it before, that cracking and popping earlier on, that in one of the other videos, that definitely was cambium lifting off. There were some quite thick bits of cambium. Yeah, I think that is thick where I was, a bit stiff where I said. Left limb looks good, looks a bit stiff on the outer, but you've got to bear in mind there's that bit of reflex there. Yeah, I think she's a bit stiff there. You can see I haven't quite got it back to 50 yet. That's probably somewhat worse. There we go, 50. 50 at not quite 20. So I had pulled it to 20 before, but I'm looking at, see that left limb's looking nice now, like that. Upper's looking a little bit stiff. So, not going to do too much more to that now. I'll mark that, yeah I can feel it, it's a slight bulge there. Maybe there's a knot there, something, I'll have to have a look. I'm not just going to hack wood off willy-nilly. stick a bit of a mark on there. So I've not really got it pulling back any further particularly. It's still about 20 at 50, but it's looking good. It's slightly higher brace. Slow and see. Now's the point where instead of rushing at it, I've got to start slowing down, be a little bit more thoughtful, fine adjustments here and there. It's the little things like the string line's better now, it's sitting on here better, it's not trying to flip. I noticed the lack of reflex here, and we've still got some there. I'll probably flip this slightly later on in the process, but I don't want to do it quite yet. If I can ease it back, take some draw weight off, get it back to say 22, 23, it'll suddenly be, oh actually I'm nearly there if I'm only aiming for 27. So yeah, we're getting there. Cup of tea. Right, I've only done a tiny bit more. I've taken a couple of strokes of the spoke shave there. There is a knot there actually, so I've tended to take it, yeah, carefully. And then a good solid continuous stroke of the spoke shave all the way along both limbs, and probably along the corners as well. I can't actually remember. So only a couple of minutes work. I mean, it probably takes you longer to watch the video than it does me to actually do the work, and I spend the time making the videos as well. I'm not working all day at making bows. I do a little and often. Early stages, maybe I'll do a half-hour session, not often longer than that. Well, I want to savour it. If I finish this, what have I got to do? Sit there in front of the computer, looking at bleeding Facebook. Anyway, you can now see we're nowhere near a full brace, but we're definitely braced now. And we'll see what it does. It's just easy to do quite a lot of work without checking it and find you've made a mistake. So it's certainly looking more like a bow now, isn't it? In that right limb. Still looks a little bit stiff there. Let's put it to 50. There's a stage where I start getting nervy. There, we've gained an inch of draw weight at least. It's now sort of 21. Maybe looking a bit stiff here, do you think? Yeah, probably a bit stiff there. But that was, like I said, that was basically just one, a good firm, solid, continuous stroke of the spoke shave. And I was still cutting, good solid heat treated wood. I quite like the look of that left limb. The right, yeah, she's looking a bit, I think, slightly weak there. That was where it was stiff. Maybe that will get some work done in that area. Won't go mad. It was just effectively, it will be a couple of good strokes of the spoke shave up the belly. Maybe chamfer these corners, and I can maybe bring this fade back a bit. Yeah, make that limb longer. I never go for big grips or very long fades. I mean, some people have a grip, 4 inches for a grip, and another, quite a lot either side, and they like a big long grip and a big cut out sight window. Do your own thing. But the fade area is quite a useful, it blends the stiff grip into the limb, but it does also give you a little bit of room for effectively lengthening a limb, or a bit of room for adjustment. Anyhow, you can see it's certainly looking better. It's looking a lot more even. Let's just give it a bit of good old exercise, let it settle in a bit. It's a mistake to do too much and not exercise it. You can see it dynamically. Yeah, it's not tilting much on the tiller. I had a big discussion about that on Primitive Archer. Does should a bow rock on the tiller, does it? Well, this one isn't doing it much because the grip is slightly concave there. But with something like an English longbow where it's very slightly curved that way, it's very prone to rock. Well, yeah, someone will say, oh, my bows don't shift at all, and no, fine, whatever. I'm not going to argue about the geometry, but I mean, if you just cut out a little semicircle there, so it sits solidly on the tiller, it'll tend to be supported by 2 points, and it's not going to rock. If you've got a dead straight, like if that's dead straight, just the weight of this ring will pull it over. We each do stuff in our own way. We have subtle differences. Some people like to clamp a bow, some don't. I never try and say I'm right, I just try and show you what I do. And as my mate JT once said, my opinion comes in 2 flavours. Take it or leave it. Cup of tea.